Welcome to Larry's Library. On this final Top 10 Tuesday of 2023, I thought it'd be different to do a little Ask Me Anything. So I posted this on my community tab on my YouTube channel, and I asked people, you know, to ask me anything. And then I picked 10, not necessarily the 10 best, but the 10 I thought I could answer and that I thought was interesting enough to use here. This video does well enough, people like to watch it, then I may do this every year. So if your question didn't get in on this one, try again next year if you want to see me do it then. This first question I selected is actually a multi-part question. There's actually 3 parts to it, and I'm going to answer 2.5 of them. So I'm going to count this as 9 and 10 in the top 10. Ask me anything. This is from Still Life 7726. And they ask, I'll give you a few options for questions. Number 1, favorite one and done single issue and why? Well, I'm not going to answer this here directly, but it's this. Or this. I'm not sure where the image is going. Maybe over here. It's that. But I did a whole top 10 on my favorite single issue comics. And that's at the top. But I'll try to link that below and above or somewhere, so if you haven't got to see that one, you can. The second part of this 9 and 10 is favorite non-Big 2 Marvel and DC comic book run. Now, that's a tough one for me because most of my favorites are, at least in the form of what I would call a run, are Marvel or DC. But 2 immediately come to mind. Dark Horse's Black Hammer and Image's Saga. And for sure, it has to go to Saga because I think both are written at an equal level, but the art is far better, I think, and more consistent in Saga because it's all that beautiful Fiona Staples stuff. So yeah, I would have to say it's Saga. Part 3 of this one is, how about one non-comic question? Favorite band or album? That is a toughie. That actually would be better as an entire top 10 on its own. But off the top of my head, without too much thought about it, I would probably say band-wise, it would be The Doors. And album-wise, it would be T-Rex's Electric Warrior. But that's really difficult because I can think of 20 that would fit into this easily. Number 8 is posted by Joseph Peterson 1728. The bigger your collection grows, do you worry more about losing it? And the answer to that one, well, it's no. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm at a point now, as I've gotten older and I've built this house and I got this nice library to keep my stuff in. My books are no longer in a basement. I'm not living in a bad neighborhood. I mean, of course, we could still have a tornado or something could take it, but I don't have the worries that I had when I was younger, and I've got a nicer place, and I just feel more secure. So now, is that a false sense of security? I don't know. I hope not. I'm comfortable at this point, and I don't really have that fear. So the answer to that one is no. Number 7 was one posted by, I'm gonna try not to butcher the name. Is it Elon Reese 3178? Maybe. And they say, we all have limited space for our collections. What rules do you apply to manage the size of your collection? What causes a book to leave and another to take its place? This could also apply to artwork and single issues. Pretty good question. A couple of things. What would cause a book to leave the collection? Well, for one thing, it would have to be, when I rate it, after I read it, it would have to be a 7 or above to live in the collection. Otherwise, it's gone. It's going to get traded or sold or something. But fortunately, I'm really good at picking stuff that I like. And it's really rare that I buy something and then read it and it rates less than a 7. I mean, just ask my daughter, the comic slayer. She's always telling me, you give a lot of 7s and 8s. Well, it's true. I do. But I contend that's because I'm good at picking stuff. At least I'm good at picking stuff that I know I will enjoy. Now, the other reason something would leave my collection is when it's upgraded. And that's what I've done here rather extensively, is I have sold off a lot, probably the majority of my single issue comic collection in favor of collected editions. So when I upgrade, typically I get rid of the original comic books, but not always. There have been a few occasions where I got the omnibus or the gallery or whatever the edition was, and then I kept the singles also. That's kind of self-defeating, but I have done it a few times when I'm just so emotionally attached to the run that I double or triple dip and then just keep everything, which is very counterproductive, both financially and as far as space management. But the idea is that if I upgrade something, I get rid of the lesser version. That's the concept. And I have pretty much done that overall. Okay, number 6 is a toughie by Next Imaginaut. Let's see if I can get there. I'm going to read the thing right off my phone here. I put this forward to Jess as a conversation topic a number of times and would similarly appreciate your perspective as a very long-term Marvel and DC reader. And it's a multi-part question, of course. 1, were you given carte blanche to reconceive Marvel or DC's entire publishing line, e.g. to reboot either's continuity and devise some new unifying narrative and brand strategy? And or 2, what would you do if you had free reign to write, co-write, plot, and or creatively direct a specific title or lines of titles, e.g. X-Men, for either publisher, for as long as you wanted, and could hire any talent onto and irrespective of any practical, e.g. sales, cross-brand, or multimedia synergistic considerations? Okay. Not pulling any punches, is he? Okay, here's what I think. Number 1, I have to admit that I'm not the target demographic for currently running single issue comic books. Okay, it's not me, and I'm not keeping up with those. There's very few modern superhero stuff that I'm reading as it comes out. Now, a few of the more modern runs I have got in hardcover later. Either it was gifted to me or there was just so much hype around it. I went ahead and tried it. So I don't have the practical knowledge to just make a bunch of sweeping changes there. But here's what I can say, and this is kind of controversial, so bear with me. And I have got into this discussion with my daughter and Reed, her husband, my son-in-law, and both of them are telling me, hey, this would never work. You're going to if you did this, if you had this magic power to make this happen, it would destroy local comic shops across the nation. And maybe they're right. Maybe I'm wrong here. But to me, I think it's time that the single issue comic book became an online experience only. Now, this doesn't cancel all the existing single issue comics, but I feel like the monthly comic book in installments like that, in the 32 pages, I think that should go away. I think that should be an online thing. And then I think, and I'm talking about big 2, big 3, all of them really should do this, in my view. In 2023, going forward, I think they should stop publishing those and instead do a trade paperback every 6 months. And then every 12 months, we get a hardcover collecting the 2 trades, right? You follow me? Much like it is now, it's just we skip the single issue book. That's how I would do it. And then, years later, perhaps you get an omnibus or a gallery edition or what have you. I mean, this doesn't take away all of our existing books. They're still there. They're still collectible. It's just, I think that the time for those kind of things are just gone. And I feel like that's something that's what I would do. I mean, that's how I think it should go. I know it's controversial, but so I kind of halfway answered a little of that for you. Oh, and there is one other part to this that kind of sort of answers Next Imaginaut's question here. And that is, and this is already happening somewhat, but in my view, not enough. I think that it's high time that Marvel, and I don't know if DC's doing this now. Like, I don't follow DC nearly as closely, and I don't follow all the current Marvel all that closely either. So maybe this is already happening. But I think it's time that Marvel allows their characters to age. And I don't mean a what-if scenario or Elseworlds or Ultimate Universe. I'm talking about the mainline universe. I think it's time we allow Spider-Man to age. We allow Captain America to age and so on and so forth. And then, we could have a new version of it. And I don't mean a new version. I mean a new person take that mantle. like, for example, you have Kate Bishop Hawkeye and you have Clint Barton Hawkeye. And they're great together. I love both characters. I mean, I did a review of some of that stuff not too long ago. And here's the thing. I think they should let him age some more because they're still drawing him a little too young, really. And I think it's time. Go ahead and let Clint Barton age. In fact, let him age out. Let him retire. You know, let Kate Bishop become Hawkeye. Now, I'm not talking about a reboot. I'm talking about a continuation. Clint Barton still exists, and he can pop up here and there, you know. But Hawkeye is now Kate Bishop. How about that? And we could do the same thing with Iron Man. I think they tried that once, but I don't think it stuck, right? And you know, and you could do the same thing with Captain America. I mean, there's you know, Patriot could be Captain America. So, you know, and maybe some of this has been done, but I don't think they've done it enough, and they definitely have not let those characters age in a really meaningful way. I don't think. And I think it's time to do that. So there's my controversial answer to some of that. Okay, number 5, I've selected one from Sleepy Reader 666, and he says, is there an artist who can ruin a comic book for you now or when you were a kid? And immediately I had an answer for that one in my head. It was, well, it's Steve Ditko. And it's not for now, though. It was when I was a kid. When I was young, I hated Steve Ditko artwork. I could not understand, I could not conceive why, you know, all these things were written about how great he was and how seminal of an artist he was and all this. I just saw a mess. I did not like it at all. And granted, I mean, he's still not my favorite. I don't put him, you know, in the same regard I do my top 10 artists. I don't. But I do like it now. I like Steve Ditko art now, and I get it. It's taken me 50 years, you know, well, 45 years probably. I mean, it's taken a long time, taken decades of looking at comic book art and reading comic books. But I have expanded quite a bit on what I deem as good art, you know, and I think that's only a natural thing that should happen. But anyway, when I was a kid, Steve Ditko he actually did take over several titles, or he filled in on several titles that I collected. And man, I just hated it. It's like, oh God, why are we having Steve Ditko here? You know, yeah, it would really ruin a book for me. But not anymore. I do appreciate Ditko. I kind of like it even. You know, not my favorite, but I do like him. So you live and you learn. Okay, for number 4, I have one posted by Eric Johnson 6057. And they say, what collected edition that you own means the most to you? Not necessarily your favorite, but a book that has the most sentimental value. For example, my Superman by Tomasi Omni probably means the most to me because I read the initial run at a time when my son was very young. I really felt for John throughout the series and enjoyed watching him grow. Therefore, that Omni really sticks with me. Well, I have a quick answer for that one too. One came straight to my mind when I read his post, and that is Ultimate Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1. Or, I'm giving you an or here because I double dipped this one. I actually triple dipped this at one time, but I have since sold the single issue comics that, well, most of them anyway, that are contained in these volumes. But I did hold on. I have an oversized hardcover of Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1. It collects, I think, the first 12 issues. I don't know if it's still worth a fortune, but at one time that book was worth a fortune. I just would not sell it. And then I have the Omnibus Volume 1 now that contains those and some more. And again, like he said in the post, this is not my favorite collected edition, not at all. But it does hold a lot of sentimental value to me because this brings me back to when those issues were coming out. And I was still collecting singles at that time. And Kristen was still living at home. And we were all reading that series together as they came out. And when I say all, I'm talking about my wife and my daughter and me. We're all 3 reading that book as it came out. And I don't think that's happened since where we're all reading the same material. I mean, it has happened occasionally on a few things. Graphic novels will pass between the 3 of us. But this was like an event, you know. It was a monthly thing. This book would come out, and we would all 3 read it, you know. And it was just great. It just reminds me of that. And so, yeah, that's my sentimental pick for sure. Lionheart 4012 posted this, and this I selected for my number 3 question. What's up, Larry? I have a question that you can use on your AMA. What were some of the reasons that you made the decision to change from single issues to collected editions? Also, what is your origin in regards to how you first got started collecting comics? Take care, my dude. Okay, well, I do have answers for that. The reason I switched from singles to primarily hardcovers, well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but I can go ahead and just name them off. Uh, One kind of funny reason is because, I put all my singles in Mylar, and they're really loud. So, like, I do a lot of my reading in bed just before, I go to sleep. And so I've got my light on over here, wife's over here, and she kind of puts something over her face so she doesn't see the glare from my reading light. So that takes care of that. But taking those comic books out, I wish I had one here. 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So I got an example here. So here's Marvel Fanfare #1. Not that the book matters at all, but I don't know how good the mic picked that up, but it's very loud. Now I got to put it back. And sometimes it's louder than that, but anyway, it got to be pretty irritating. So that was one reason. I mean, that's a very minor reason, but I thought it was a funny one. And another reason is space, because no matter how you look at it, no matter how you measure it, if you go from singles to a collected edition, even if it's a trade paperback, if it's a hardcover, if it's an omnibus, whatever it is, it's going to take up less space. Certainly less space this way, less depth. So you're going to save shelf space and room space by going to collected editions. There is no doubt. So that's another reason. But probably the biggest reason is I love the beautiful hardcovers and the large presentation and seeing the artwork at something close or closer to the original size that it was drawn at. I really love that. So, and then also the hardcovers just feel more permanent, and in most ways they are, and you don't require all the supplies that you need to take care of these. You're going to have boxes or bins or something. I built these bins. Well, I built most of them. Some of them I bought that way, but I altered them a little bit. And you need a board. And really, if you care about the thing, you're going to want to get the good stuff. So you're going to want to get an acid-free board, and then you're going to want to get Mylar. You're not going to want to use poly. Don't put your books in poly. Come on. What are you, a savage? So, yeah, and the hardcover volumes just avoid all that, And they look great on the shelf. Just beautiful. So that's the reasons there. Now, as far as my origins, I'm pretty sure I've talked about my comic book origins before, but I don't remember where. I'm sure maybe in a live stream, but I'll go over it again here briefly. Basically, I have two. And when I think of origin stories for comic book collectors, I think of like the first time you realize, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read these and collect these for my life, for my whole life, And really that was when the first comics I ever read, I knew it right then that was it. That was for me. That was my thing, And I can think of two times, I have two earliest memories of comic books, and I don't know which came first, And if you think, well, why don't you remember that? Well, you know what? You're probably a lot younger than me. When you get as old as I am, you're not going to remember all these things. You're probably not. You're just not. So it's coming for you. But anyway, so like I said, I don't know which one of these came first. Both books are 1976 comic books. And the first one I'll talk about is where I was staying with my aunt for like the weekend or something. And she lives on the other side of town from where I lived. And so, I wasn't familiar with what was over there. And if I was, I had no way of getting there anyway. Can't ride my bike all the way across town. But, Cycle Cleveland probably can. But, I couldn't when I was a little kid. So, but anyway, she would take me sometimes. We would go for a walk. And about 3 blocks from her house, there was this little junk shop. I called it a junk shop because I don't know what else to call it. It was a very old, decrepit building with a glass front, and painted on the glass it said Pyramid Electronics. Now, why did they have books there? I don't know. Maybe it used to just be a radio electronic repair shop. I don't know. But now, I mean, it had some old radios in there and whatnot, but then it had like paperback books, shelves and shelves of old paperback books and magazines, and they had one box of old comic books. Now I say old comic books, but actually they probably weren't that old. But they were like I think 10 cents a piece, and she told me I could pick out 12 or 15 of those, and I was like, wow, really? Okay, so got down on the floor because it was on the floor and started digging through that box. And I pulled out a bunch of stuff, mostly Marvel stuff. But the only one I know of for sure that I pulled out of there was Marvel Spotlight 29, issue 29. And it's from 1976. But this would not have been 1976, I don't think, because I was born in 68. So that would put me at, what, like 8 years old in 1976? So I'm thinking this was not new. This was probably a year or two old, at least. So maybe I was 9 or 10, I'm guessing. I don't know. But it had Moon Knight on the cover. Cover, I believe it was it's Jack Kirby cover. Awesome. And I'd never heard of this character, never seen him before, but I immediately loved this character. And I have loved Moon Knight, the Moon Knight character, for forever. I still do. I was quite disappointed that the Moon Knight TV show was much more about the more modern incarnations of the character and less about the classic version of the character that I know and love. But that's a whole other video. Anyway, so yeah, that started my love affair with Marvel Comics for sure. I think was that trip to that junk shop with my aunt, when I was a very, very little kid. The other story, and like I said, I'm not sure which came first. I think the story with my aunt was first. That's what my gut says, but I don't know that for a fact. Was where I went fishing with my dad, and I was not into fishing. Not an outdoorsman, never was, still am not much of an outdoor guy. I'm an indoor kind of guy. But anyway, but my dad liked that, so we went to this pay lake, and we had to go get some more bait or something. I think we had to go buy worms. So we walked to the little bait shop there, and they had a spinner rack in this bait shop. And I immediately was like asking my dad, hey, can you buy me a comic book? Can we get a comic off this rack? And, he said, yeah, okay, sure. And it was Commandy issue 39 with the Joe Kubert cover, and I just really, I remember that cover, with it there. He's like behind this, let's see, is it like a fish bowl? It's like he's the fish, and then the animals are on the outside, and they're looking at him. Something like that. I mean, I know it'll jog my memory when I go get the scan for this, but I'll put it up here. And that issue was also 1976. Now, that makes me think, I said that I wouldn't have been 8 in the other, and I thought that was first. Now I'm kind of thinking that this story might go before the story with my aunt, because they're both 1976 issues, and this was on a spinner rack in a bait shop. So if this bait shop was like a convenience store kind of thing, that makes me think more likely that this issue wasn't very old at the time, or maybe it was 6 or 8 months old. Probably not though, right? I mean, if it was stocked new, and then it just sat there for a few months. So I don't know, maybe the bait shop story is before the ant story. I'm sure this is not enthralling for everyone, so I'm not going to keep dwelling on it, but it was one of those. And either way, I think that either the Commandy 39 or the Marvel Spotlight 29 was my first comic books that I ever bought and read, to my knowledge, to my memory. So hopefully that wasn't way too long and boring for you, but that was my answer. Okay, for number 2, I selected one from Bcash 1994. I believe that's Brandon, I think. And he asked, I know this can be considered a tough question for some collectors, but what is your favorite comic book era? Not a tough question for me at all. And the only thing tough about it probably would be deciding what to call it. But basically, I'm going to say bronze/copper is my favorite comic book era ever. I mean, I selected these covers, just a bunch of random, really, books from my collection. These are scans of covers that I have, of books I own. I mean, just look at all the great stuff that came out during the period of, say, 1970 to about 1986. I mean, I don't think there's an era of time where this much great stuff came out in comic book form. And I don't mean just came out as in printed, but I mean was created in that period. I mean, just look at all of this. Now, not all of the things I've selected here in this display, if you will, are seminal works. Many of them are, but look how great and cool they are. I mean, and it just keeps on coming. And I could have had 10 or 20 of these displays, but I only did the one. I mean, there's just that much stuff, just on and on and on. I mean, some of this is probably nostalgia, I'd have to admit, because I was born in '68, so you do the math, you can see how old I was at the time. But I still think that's the greatest time for comic books, for American, mainstream comic books. I don't think there's a greater era than 1970 through 1986. Now, I haven't said that. I do love a lot of comic books from every single era. Well, I'm not much of a Golden Age guy. I don't like a lot of the stuff from the Golden Age, but I do like a fair amount from the Silver Age. But like I said, my jam is the Bronze Age, and then the era slightly after that, the Copper Age, I guess you'd call it. That would be my prime time, I think. If I got to make a choice, that's it, and it's an easy one for me. And my number one Ask Me Anything question for 2023 is from my daughter, the Comic Slayer. And she says, did you only have one child because you knew you couldn't get a better one? My only answer to that is yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, why would you want to continue on and risk what you're going to get? I mean, I know what I got here, and I got the greatest. So, of course, the answer is yes. So, I hope you like taking a look at this, and I hope this was as fun for you watching it as it was for me making it. And if this goes over well and people care enough to watch it, then maybe I'll do another one next December. So thanks for writing in these questions, and thanks for watching my stuff. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you next time.